The Conjuring franchise has been one of the biggest names in horror over the past 15 years. With the franchise coming to a close with 2025's The Conjuring Last Rites, it's time to take a look back at the series and rank each film from the iconic and terrifying to the overrated and disappointing. Get your crosses and rosaries because we're about to rank every Conjuring movie from worst to best. But before we do, just a reminder, like this video, subscribe to the channel for more on horror, entertainment, and video games. Turn on notifications so you never miss when we post a new video. For this list, we're considering the Conjuring films, Annabelle movies, the two nun outings, and the Curse of La Llorona. And let's kick off the list at number 10. The Conjuring Universe has had a surprising amount of mediocre to disappointing movies for a franchise loved by so many, including myself. But Annabelle kind of takes the cake in this regard. There are a couple of really great scares in the film, but many of the characters just aren't all that likable, and the story doesn't have as much weight as it thinks it does until the very end of Annabelle creation kind of rewrites some of the first movie's backstory. Creepy dolls can be scary as hell. Just look at this cool popcorn bucket my theater is doing for The Conjuring Last Rites. But the Annabelle franchise didn't find the right formula to stand on its own until the second film. Until then, the first Annabelle's fun enough, but there's a reason that it's number 10 on the list. At number 9, we have 2018's The Nun. I'll be honest, I like The Nun more than a lot of other people do, and I enjoyed it a lot more on the second viewing, but the film has some serious problems too. As for the good stuff, I like the characters a lot. Frenchie in particular is really likable and makes the footage of him we see in the first Conjuring film even more impactful. On top of that, there are some incredibly scary moments in the movie, and I find Valak to be the best baddie in the entire Conjuring universe, no disrespect to Annabelle. In particular, the buried alive sequence with Father Burke is incredibly creepy, as is almost the entire third act. But the problem with The Nun is the story. There just isn't quite enough here for a feature film, and it drags the movie down in spots, making it feel like it's a slow, plodding drag rather than a tense horror movie. The constant urgency in the first two Conjuring films is missing here, and that lack of urgency makes it a little harder to be as invested in the characters by the time the third act comes around. Number 8 is 2019's The Curse of La Llorona. Set in late 1970s Los Angeles, The Curse of La Llorona finds a single mother and her children fighting an evil curse that threatens her family. This is another Conjureverse film that I think I liked more than a lot of others did, but I also completely get why it's so low on a lot of rankings. And that said, it's still 8th on my list, so I didn't love it that much. From an atmospheric standpoint, though, this movie really shines. There's some good scares to be had here. The bathtub scene in particular, while not exactly Nancy in A Nightmare on Elm Street, is still really great. Nothing in the Conjuring universe is bad, but from here on in, we're into the movies that are differing stages of good. Starting with The Nun 2 at number 7. Having come out in 2023, the sequel's to the second to last film in the series and features the return of some fan-favorite characters. The biggest difference between the first and second Nun movies is that The Nun 2 is much scarier. There are some excellent scenes here. It's too bad the newsstand shot kind of got ruined by being in trailers. The movie is set 4 years after the original, and we see Valak back to wreak more havoc on Sister Irene and Frenchie, but The Nun 2 is a much more fun watch than the first outing overall. At number 6, Annabelle Comes Home is the final film in the Annabelle trilogy and the Conjureverse movie that's grown on me the most. If I'd made this list 2 years ago, this movie would have been much lower on the list, but my most recent viewing I appreciated it a lot more. The scares here are fantastic, and we get some backstory about how Annabelle is a conduit and a beacon for evil spirits. Ed and Lorraine Warren dominate any Conjuring film they appear in, so the movie will feel flat after the first act for some people. But give the other characters a chance. In particular, Bob is a character you'll find yourself cheering for, and Bob's got balls after all. My biggest issue with this film remains that the characters make 1980 slasher movies decisions all the time in Annabelle Comes Home. At times it feels like whatever the worst possible decision to make is, that's exactly what they're going to do, all while the Warrens' teenage daughter Judy is seemingly an expert on the paranormal already. Still, it's a fun watch with some pretty great scares. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It is the first proper Conjuring film to appear on this list, and it comes in at number 5. The movie focuses on the famous Arnie Johnson case, where Johnson claimed demonic possession as his defense in a murder trial. Early in the first act, Patrick Wilson's Ed Warren suffers a heart attack, changing the dynamics of the film compared to the first two. The Devil Made Me Do It is lighter on the scary moments than the first two Conjuring movies, but I liked the focus on character dynamics here. Vera Farmiga's Lorraine Warren gets a chance to shine in the third outing in a truly great performance. There's a lot to like about the parallel bonds between Ed and Lorraine and Arnie and his future wife, as both women stare into a terrifying future that potentially has the person they love gone. The number 4 movie on this list is the final one, The Conjuring Last Rites. I loved Last Rites. I know it's getting mixed reviews. I thought it was fantastic, as it offers a nice ending to what has been a 12-year franchise. Fans will love that Annabelle's back in action at times, and it's hugely noticeable that James Wan is back in as writer and producer in this movie. Right from the movie's opening, the urgency is ramped up to something fans will recognize from the first two films, and the scares in the finale are a big step up from what we got in The Devil Made Me Do It. What I loved most about this film is that once again Vera Farmiga stands out as Lorraine Warren, and the youngest Warren, Judy, drives the story too. There's a lot happening in this movie, and it probably will divide fans, but there are themes about generational pain and trauma, facing mortality, facing endings, whether it's the ending of your career or the ending of your child being a child, while also looking forward to new beginnings for the people in the film. The Conjuring films have always presented the Warrens in the best possible light whatsoever, and that's no different here in Last Rites. But we get one final scare from the team that proves to be a fitting send-off for Ed and Lorraine Warren on the big screen. And the blood waterfall is incredible. It reminded me of the Shining scene, just on a smaller scale. At number 3, Annabelle's second standalone outing takes center stage. Set primarily in the 1950s, Annabelle Creation is the creepiest spin-off film in my opinion, and the best movie in terms of story, performances, and how it relates to the franchise as a whole. Since Annabelle is such a dominant figure throughout the Conjuring universe, getting somewhat of an origin story is a nice addition to the overall narrative. Creation is a really great example of how evil preys on people experiencing tragedy, uncertainty, or fear. A couple's lives have been turned upside down after a tragedy involving their daughter. They turn their home into a place for orphans to stay, and we soon learn how the Annabelle doll got its power. The end of the film really lifts up the quality of the original Annabelle, in my opinion, too, as it ties the two stories together very nicely. Now we're into the truly great movies, and the original Conjuring film from 2013 comes in second on the list. I think the first two movies are interchangeable. Some people are going to like the first one more. Some people are going to like the second one more. I just personally prefer the Enfield haunting as a story over what we got in the first one. But that said, I love the remote settings of The Conjuring, the first Conjuring, and Annabelle Creation. I think they add a lot to the atmosphere of the films. And I love the character development for both Ed and Lorraine Warren. In the final films, there's something fun, though, about seeing them at the height of their careers in the first and second movies of the Conjuring series. Most Conjuring movies have truly incredible opens. The original's no exception. The scares are great. James Wan shoots the movie incredibly well. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga have amazing chemistry as Ed and Lorraine Warren from even the very first scenes, and that chemistry is the heartbeat for the entire franchise. Movies about possession and or haunted houses are always a fine line between creating scary moments that'll jolt an audience and building a constant feeling of tension and dread. In the 2010s, this subgenre gained popularity, and a lot of the movies fell flat because that balance wasn't there. The cast and crew of The Conjuring were able to capture both and create magic that would launch a 10-film franchise, though. And that brings us to number 1 on our list, and it's The Conjuring 2. For me, I find that the Enfield haunting is just a lot more fascinating than the story in the original. The fact that the family was facing heavy accusations of making it all up, with some evidence supporting that, made how the story was presented even more interesting. Add on to that the real life story, the Warrens weren't all that involved. There was some creative license taken here, as there is in all of these, but I found it interesting how this was sort of turned into more of a Warren story while keeping some of the other people, the other experts, quote unquote, involved, but it was still a lot of fun as a Conjuring film. The big reason for me, though, is that Valak is such a badass of a villain. I like Annabelle too, but Valak is just a different level of creepy, and the scenes with the painting in the Warren's office are truly chilling. The only downside of the movie is that the formula is a little familiar by 2016. There wasn't much of a newness to it all like there was in the original. But the performances and effects are strong enough to make The Conjuring 2 the #1 movie on our list. Which Conjuring movie is your favorite? Let us know in comments. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel for a lot more horror movie content, including our review of The Conjuring Last Rites. Have a great day, everybody.